And this show is a little bit about the meta of the game, the community, the disaffected. Eliminator, you're still a big fan and enjoying the game, right?
Sure am.
And Grug, not so much.
Not at all, really.
And you were a huge fan of Diablo III all during development, Grug. You were doing these regular posts on the Battle.net forums. What did you call them? Your good night thread?
The late night threads, yeah. I'd been doing one a day since last November, trying to spark discussion, and hopefully that most of the younger crowd had gone to bed already, and it was a hope to sort of increase the quality of the average post in that particular thread. But
and what were you chatting about? Just kind of community stuff? And
usually
kind of
I'd come up with a new topic each night. Some of them were silly, like joke classes. Some of them were more serious, like what happened to the talisman, that kind of thing. But, yeah.
And you've been on the podcast a number of times, pre-game, very excited. You were big in the beta testing and everything.
Yeah, I was. Even before the beta started, I was on the old Battle.net forums, may they rest in peace, and just, as involved in the game as possible. I went to the last 3 BlizzCons exclusively for Diablo III, and, yep.
Okay, we're going to do kind of a tale of two cities here. Let's a little bit of background from you, Eliminator. You were also very interested in the game, and you were on lots of podcasts and enjoyed the beta test. And the game came out, and you're still enjoying it a lot, right?
That's correct. I'm still having a lot of fun with it, and I feel that overall it's far superior to what Diablo II was when it first came out.
And you haven't been that active on the site or the podcast lately because I think you were annoyed by all of the complaints, right?
Exactly. Every time I went on, there was somebody complaining about something, and it was just kind of, I always felt that most people were just talking like they had rose-colored glasses left on, thinking that the past games were fantastic at start, but they really weren't.
Compared to what you were expecting in the beta, how is it going?
For me, it's lived up to its expectations. The story was okay. I wish it was a little bit better, but I mean, I couldn't really complain considering the fact that the other games in the series didn't really have much of any story.
You're happy with the end game and Inferno and
the end game.
How about the item system? Everybody hates the item system.
Well, the end game stuff is a little bit frustrating, but it's not something that I'm going to swear off the game for. I know that it's going to be fixed, just like the end game stuff was fixed kind of in Diablo 2.
And how about you, Grug? What went wrong? How long did you play, and why have you quit playing?
It's hard to keep track. I think the last time I played was about 3 weeks ago. My highest level character was a level 49 Witch Doctor. I got up to Act 4 Nightmare, and I was just before the Diablo fight, and I was thinking to myself, I could keep going, but what's going to happen if I beat Diablo? I'm going to have to play Inferno again, which is the exact same thing I've been doing these past, couple of hours or days. I'm not really going to see anything new. There's no new content. There's no new monsters. The items will look different, but they're just going to have higher numbers on them. They're not actually going to change the way I fight at all. I've already got a good build, which was I discussed in a previous podcast, which was doing me pretty well, and I really liked using it, but I wasn't going to be progressing anymore in terms of that. There was a large variety of reasons, but mainly it was that, it's just going to be more of the same, and I don't think Inferno, even if it is some magical holy ground, it's not really worth slogging through the same game 3 times in order to play it again.
But that was the same thing in Diablo 2. Did you have hell characters in Diablo 2 and high-level stuff?
Not really, but I did recognize that in Diablo 2, even in one difficulty mode, like normal mode, was designed to be a complete experience, whereas in Diablo 3, they're sort of relying so much on the repeated difficulties so that all 4 of them are considered the complete experience, and there's way more repetition than is really acceptable. Like, for example, they acknowledge themselves that normal mode is obscenely easy, and if that's the case, why are they making us go through it? Because wouldn't it make more sense to let a more experienced players start on a difficulty that they would enjoy more and feel comfortable with, while also soaking up the story. Basically, normal mode is essentially filler. Same with Nightmare mode, in a way.
So you didn't even get to the end game in Inferno, where most people have gotten sick of... Most people I know who've burned out on it played way too much and got a level 60 really quickly and bought a bunch of real money, or bought a bunch of auction house stuff, and then found it was kind of a boring grind. And you didn't even get to that point. You were tired of it just from the regular game.
Yeah, because I saw where it was going. I had already experienced just how bland and repetitious it was, and even if Inferno was extremely awesome, it's just completely unacceptable to make us play the same content so many times just to get it out of the way, as it were.
What do you think of this Eliminator? Was he looking for the wrong game?
Partially, yeah. I mean, that's what Diablo's all been about, has been the grind, getting up to whatever, getting up to 99 if you wanted to go up to that far, or if you wanted to even just get to hell in Diablo 2 or any of the Diablo games.
I totally agree with you. I know that Diablo series is about the grind. The thing is, there's still no exception to make the grind as atrociously boring as it was. The items did absolutely nothing interesting. The static overworlds and the bland architecture in the dungeons didn't help the actual gameplay of it. It was grinding for grinding's sake. Blizzard repeating the content to increase the gameplay length artificially.
But I mean, that's the same way it was in Diablo 2.
Yes.
But I think the big difference in Diablo 3 is the fact that we have something to keep us a little more interested, and that's the skills. Like getting those new skills each level. I'm always playing with new things. I mean, it kind of defeats the purpose if you're going to just say, oh, I'm going to just play this build and that's it. You're going to miss out on all the other little things you could be doing with all the different skills and runes for the skills.
Well, the thing is, I know that experimentation is a large part of it, but if I found a good build and I get all these new skills, they're like, I'll try it out. It's like, it's kind of neat, but now it's way less effective than what I have right now. I'm just going to forget about it. They feel token, especially since you just get them automatically. You don't pick out which ones were cool. They just kind of appear to you, and you're like, oh yeah, there it is.
Well, I think you could pick out the ones that you like, though, or you could keep trying different combinations. I think that's the real enjoyment for me, is the fact that I got some new skills. Well, these don't really work with the ones I have right now. Well, let me try to do a completely different build and see how that goes about. And by the time I get the next level, I've already fooled around with the previous level skills enough that I'm like, okay, well, let me try something completely different. And that's how the game has been kept completely fresh for me. Every single level is just like fooling around with different combinations, and I've had a lot of fun like that.
I suppose that's true, but in which case what you're describing is sort of like a library where you can just kind of play around with the skills for free, and it's neat and all, but you're really just admiring the spell effects and all that, because at least in the content I play, there's really no need to sort of tweak your build to get past anything, as once you find something effective, you're good with it. Ideally, in an RPG, the customization should be motivated by difficulty, not by, oh, here's a new bit of content, I better use it because I feel obligated to because I have it. It should be that, oh, my build really isn't working in this situation. How can I improve it? How can I tweak it? And unfortunately, due to all the skills and runes being about equal, you don't really get to feel like you're improving at all. You're just doing something, a little bit different, and oftentimes it's not as effective.
Well, if you got the hell, you would understand. Yeah, you would understand.
I've been smiling widely, thinking everyone who's played, get to hell, and you'll find out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really, once you get to hell and you start encountering those champions and those rare packs, they take a little bit more strategy, and you have to actually start thinking about, okay, well, I need skills that regain me health. I need skills that are going to gain me my resource. I need skills to escape. And due to the fact that they have so many different equal type of skills, there's a wide variety of choices for you to pick from and actually go with those builds. And it really is a lot of fun once you get past that first part of like, oh, well, this is pretty easy, this is not even much of a challenge. For most of the hardcore players, I know I have a friend actually who's not really that good of a player, and he's getting beat up in normal, and he's having still a good time and getting challenged by normal.
Yeah, I mean, I believe you. I'm sure that Hell mode is very interesting in terms of gameplay and difficulty, but that still brings up the fact that for a lot of players, stuff like normal mode and nightmare mode are way too easy. And I know that you got to have that super easy mode for your friend who is maybe not so good at the game. The problem is that in Diablo 3, the way it's designed in terms of progression, you are pretty much forced to basically play normal mode as you would any other difficulty. There's no way to advance the content fast enough that the game becomes challenging. Like in Act 1, if you just beat the Defiled Cemetery and you thought it was too easy, there's no way to sort of plow through the game and get to the Festering Woods. You still have to slog through Cathedral Level 4 and the Highlands and the Goatman Dungeon and all of that. And by the time you get to the Festering Woods, you've already just naturally gained a bunch of XP and items, and the game is easy again. And I really wish that the game wasn't so linear, and you could, in fact, sort of speed through if you needed to and get to harder content. Like in Diablo 2, if you wanted to, you could just sort of run through the cold plains into the stony field or the underground passage or whatever, if anything was getting too easy for you. But you can't do that in Diablo 3. The way it's arranged is so linear and repetitious, you have to just slog through everything, and it becomes a chore rather than something interesting.
Well, you could always get a friend to get you past into the harder difficulties.
True, but that shouldn't be, shouldn't rely on the rest of the community to make up for, design faults that are Blizzard's fault.
Well, that's kind of the whole accessibility thing. They wanted to make sure it wasn't too hard and wanted to lead you through, and obviously you don't care for that. You don't want to be led through.
No, I'm cool. I'm cool with it being easy for easy players, but just the fact that everyone is obligated to slog through the same thing, and there's no way for a skilled player to sort of advance themselves more quickly without sort of exploiting and bypassing the system.
I think it would have been. I think this is like a comment that was brought up on a earlier podcast about having to. It would be better if maybe Blizzard allowed players to play at a harder level if they wanted to start.
Like Torchlight or Torchlight 2, you can choose through 4 difficulty levels.
Sort of like Torchlight 2, yeah. Actually, I heard a pretty good suggestion on the forums that once you beat normal mode, you can elect to have any new characters start in Nightmare. I mean, obviously there are some logistical issues, like suddenly you have 30-plus skills and runes to choose from, and you have no equipment, but then again, you already have a level 30 or so play. You already have a level 30 character who can outfit you, you have a bunch of gold, and I really think that would be an exciting time as rather than getting all the skills bit by bit, suddenly you have a huge smorgasbord and you can kind of play around with whatever you want and find interesting things and learn the class that way.
I don't even think Nightmare would do. I think you'd have to pull it all the way up to Hell.
Perhaps.
I'd say once you got to, or you could say something where once you've beaten every difficulty, you could bring a character up to that difficulty. But then you'd have all these people. Then you'd have all these people complaining about.
They'd all start in Inferno. Oh, though, wouldn't you have to beat Inferno? Oh yeah, you'd have to beat Inferno though.
Yeah,
that's kind of tough.
Yeah.
If there was a button you could click and have a new character start at level 60, would you want to do that, Grug?
Possibly.
I mean, you could go back and play a Nightmare and slaughter stuff if you wanted to, but I mean, it seems like you're just objecting to having to get to 60 in the first place.
I mean, I like that, they're doing so much of the design and the tuning for level 60, it seems unacceptable that, they're still asking us to go through the rest of the game before we can get to the quality part. I mean, if you look at World of Warcraft, for example, everyone's talking about, oh, you got to go to the end game, you got to go to the end game. But at least in World of Warcraft, they've been taking steps to make the trip to max level more interesting. They've been rehashing old zones, and even if you make a new character, there's always new stories and new content all over the world, and you can sort of pick and mix. Whereas Diablo 3 doesn't have that luxury. It's just the same thing for every person every time you play.
The only bad
How many classes did you build, Grug? Just the Witch Doctor?
I got the Witch Doctor to level 49, as I said. He was my main. My second highest was a level 27 Barbarian who managed to kill Diablo on normal mode. And I had a level 15 Demon Hunter, and I played very little of the Wizard and Monk. I had gotten my fill during beta, honestly.
What does your character roster look like, Eliminator?
I got a level 60 Witch Doctor in Act 2 of Inferno, and then the rest of them are in Nightmare, except for a Demon Hunter who's just about in Nightmare.
Flux, I think we should ask Eliminator the question you asked me. Eliminator, if there was a button you could press to get one of those characters to level 60, would you do it?
No, probably not. I kind of enjoy the way that it's set up right now, where I get to play through the game and are given little cookies as I get up in level and try new things and experiment as I go up to level 60. I probably wouldn't enjoy getting handed 700 skills and be said, okay, now pick what skills you need, and you have no idea what they do, how they are supposed to be used, where they're supposed to be used, and now you're going to have to get your rear end kicked for the next 7 hours to try to figure this out in Inferno.
Interesting. Yeah, I do agree that just going from 0 to 60, as it were, would be rather disorienting in terms of learning the class. But I still feel like, most of the game before Inferno just feels like it's one long tutorial. As you said, they're introducing skills, bit by bit, but it's still unbelievably painfully slow as it is. And even if you find a skill you like, there's no progression along the way. Well, that's a different issue entirely.
A lot of the questions I had about why people are getting sick of the game don't really apply, because you didn't play to the point most people are complaining about, Grug, so it's kind of odd. But I mean, I made a list of things that, in the comments on a thread, a lot of people were complaining about this. You guys can certainly weigh in on them. I'll just read off the 10. They're short. The auction house makes it too easy to get overgeared. Free specs give you no reason to re-roll. Auto attributes, no skill points, no rune levels means your character lacks identity. Sets uniques are too uncommon and lacking in flavor or quality. Inferno is really hard and requires super gear and limits play styles. No PvP. The low max level makes the long-term play only about item finding. Gambling can only produce rares identical to what you might find anyway and has horrible odds to do so. No gambling makes the set and uniques feel even scarcer, and there'd be more if I took time to think of them. And those don't seem like they were really the problems you were getting, Grug.
Well, you listed off so many, I can't exactly remember all of them. Some of them were certainly true. For example, the lack of... did you mention lack of interesting item fixes?
Yeah, that's the biggest problem most people have, is the item sets and the item uniques, and especially just... That's what people really complain about in the item hunting in Inferno, because you never find anything that really changes your character, changes the paradigm of your play. You just, hey, 20 more dexterity, that'll give me 0.02% more damage, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's really the biggest issue in Diablo 3 from someone like Eliminator, who's really into the item hunt, just how dull everything is. And, you remember the original rune system, right, which you could find and rank up? That would have certainly alleviated a lot of the issues I had been having and some of the people have been having. It's another item to hunt for. It would actually, change your gameplay a lot, make it more interesting. The other thing you mentioned was the auction house. And, yeah, I agree that the auction house does make it absurdly easy to find what you want. As soon as it was announced, I realized what kind of issue this would be. And actually, before it was announced, when people come up, had suggested some kind of auction house like WoW had, that because of the absurd number of people playing and sharing a market, that you could basically get any item that you wanted.
How is your auction house experience going, Eliminator? Is that where you've gotten most of your in-game gear?
I would probably say about 50% of my end-game gears come from the auction house.
And the rest of it was self-found?
Yeah, the rest of it was self-found.
Have you been selling much on the auction house, or are you just buying?
I've been selling, actually. As I play the lower-level guys, I always just grab whatever I don't need and throw it up on the auction house. And also, as whatever I pick up when I'm playing in Inferno, I throw it up on the auction house as well.
Did you use the auction house at all, Grug, or you didn't like it in theory and didn't touch it in reality?
I resisted at first, then I poked around a bit, and I realized that, due to the way the item drops are skewed, you can get really, really behind in terms of gear. And so, yeah, I sold some stuff and I bought some stuff whenever I was just like, I can't find anything decent, and my weapon is 8 levels below myself. I'm just going to get something.
And that still wasn't enough to keep your interest.
Of course not. I mean, it's basically like items are stat sticks. They're gear. It's pure gear check. If you have the numbers, you can do it. If you don't have the numbers, you can't do it.
I think later on in Inferno, they did have some interesting affixes and stuff when they started adding the plus to damage for certain skills and stuff like that. I think they should have added that a little earlier.
Oh,
or
absolutely.
Have it a little more prevalent in the game.
Oh,
where it affects more of the skills and not just a smaller number of them.
Exactly. One thing that seemed very promising before the game came out is that one of the skills that was on the Witch Doctor actually increased its range depending on your health globe and gold pickup radius. And I think it's brilliant that having sort of general modifiers on your items being able to affect skills in certain ways, especially since if you can have multiple skills being affected by the same modifier, and you can get a lot of synergy in that, and it would really motivate the item hunt a great deal. But instead, we wind up with the usual problem with the item system, which is that the affixes that actually affect skills are so rare and also so minuscule and unreasonably specific, like, oh, this sword gives me plus to magic missile, but I am I'm a barbarian, so who cares? Or I'm a wizard and I don't use magic missile, so who cares? That's basically one less affix I can use. I'm throwing this item away.
Well, in theory, the point is the bonus is good enough to that skill that it makes you want to use it, even if you're not using it already. But it hasn't worked out that way. They're just too rare, it seems like. And the bonuses aren't large enough.
That's really the key right there.
Really only 5% or 8% or sometimes even 13% isn't really enough to make you want to forego the more stats for them.
And I was talking to a podcast I recorded a couple days ago. It hasn't been posted yet, but will be before this one. 2 guys who've done a lot of Inferno in-game hunting, and neither one of them had ever used an item that gave plus damage to a skill. They just said, you're 1 in 10,000 rare that's good enough to really use. The odds of that also having a plus skill that you can use, it's just, it's needle in the world's biggest haystack. Yeah. So maybe it's tough because they don't have skill trees. Like you look at Diablo II and it had, plus to javelin skills or plus to war cries or something. So the odds were pretty good. It was a third of your skills were covered by these item bonuses. And Charms especially had those.
And we had talked about that in one of the other podcasts. It'd be interesting if they had like items that just gave you straight up a plus to that skill and gave you that animation that they have all backlogged for all the rune level skills.
I think it would.
Well, they could also do, because they have the skills grouped into groups of 6. 6 different groups. They could say this is +5 to all defensive skills or something.
Well,
like that
wouldn't work out so well because players typically only use 1 or 2 from any particular category. What would have been more interesting is if they used the categories that they had before they enforced the 6-button thing, which was like, how Witch Doctor had summoning, spirits, and physical worlds. Basically, putting the skills into more general themes rather than themes of function, more like themes of form, like all in. like a bonus to insect skills or a bonus to stuff that falls on people for the wizard.
And there's a lot of stuff that falls on people's skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's rune stones that give you that in skills that don't otherwise do it. So.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I was going to wonder, if they did make an expansion, what could they possibly do next? Ideally, if the Blizzard people were half decent story writers, they would have set up or foreshadowed something else going on other than, Adria's at large, blah, blah, blah.
Well, there's tons of actually stuff that they never even talked about.
Yeah, but that's the point. They never mentioned it. It's just going to come out of nowhere.
Nereza in the Festering Woods and stuff like that, where they talked about her. They could do something with her.
True. I'm personally thinking that
Adria, what happens to the Black Soul Stone? What happens to Diablo? There's tons of things as far as nothing was finished in the story. That was the problem with it. Nothing
everyone assumes Imperius is going to be a boss in one of the expansions. I mean, that seems pretty obvious.
Well, consider like Diablo 2. At the end of Diablo 2, you knew you kind of figured what would happen next. I mean, the very last cutscene is Baal, disguised as Tyrael, getting his soul stone back and setting fire to the world, and you knew that was coming next. Whereas in Diablo 3, it's just an unambiguously happy ending. Evil is destroyed.
It's kind of weird because Diablo 2's ending is kind of like a cliffhanger from like a TV show, and Diablo 3's ending is kind of like a movie that they didn't expect to have a sequel to or something like that. Which is odd considering the fact everything had to know that this game was going to be wildly successful.
They absolutely knew to an expansion pack.
Yeah, especially wildly successful enough for them to do an expansion pack.
Yeah.
Well, they've planned the 2 expansion packs all along, and they've said that the story is going to wrap up. They're going to wrap up the Diablo trilogy in the expansion packs. So it's not going to be like Diablo 2 expansion ended where, the World Stone's been destroyed and who knows what's going to happen next.
I mean, considering that you already killed, the embodiment of all evil, I'm...
Like 5 times.
No, but especially so in, the specific player character in Diablo 3, what could they possibly throw at you next? I mean, the angels maybe, but considering that you trounced the people who trounced them, I'm sure there's some logical term that explains why that wouldn't work if they tried to fight you. Maybe...
Murlocs. We're going to get Murlocs.
Or robots or something.
Gnomes with guns.
I think they're probably, in the next expansion, it's going to be against angels, and then during that they're going to introduce some new villainous faction, which is the third one, just like they did in StarCraft with the hybrids.
Spoiler.
Oh, please. Everyone knows that StarCraft 2 players don't listen to this.
There aren't any StarCraft 2 players, all the better.
Yeah.
So, my question was going to be, what could they put in patches? Expansion next, but, in the meantime, patches. We've got PvP patch coming up. We've got, supposedly 104 is going to be a big item character skill rebalancing, lots of game fixes. And then after that, they're going to do the one with all the items and the new uniques and the new sets and everything improved. Doesn't sound like any of those will really lure you back, though, Grug, because you didn't quit because of that so much.
Yeah, again, it's not so much. It's not the items that made me stop playing. It's the content. The content, being so poor.
It sounds like the structure of the content. You only played one character to even get all the skills. You haven't really scratched the surface of the game. You just got sick of doing the same stuff.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping.
So if they change up the skills and make new things, you're like that. You don't care because that wasn't your complaint anyway.
Yeah, I was hoping that since Diablo is so built around randomness, that they would find a good way to keep the content fresh and offer a lot of replayability just for that, let alone the item hunt. Just seeing what would happen next. And one thing they could do is, right when you're starting the game, the very first real dungeon you go into is Tristram Cathedral Floor 1, which is about 6 tiles long, and it feels like a really good length for a dungeon, 6 tiles long. Just enough to make it feel like you're progressing through an area. You don't have to search for an exit, and when you play it, you're satisfied, but you want more. And I feel like if they made a lot of little dungeons that were about that long, so, especially in the overworld, there's a random cave, I can be in here for 10 minutes rather than, half an hour, which is the current scheme. That would certainly improve the replayability a lot more. Adding more tile sets would absolutely help. especially considering that a lot of the side dungeons are just the Act 1 caves or the Act 2 caves with recolors and different crops screwed about. Really, they need to pack more variety and more dungeons which are shorter, which would be the best option. Keep things fresh, keep things moving, as opposed to the endless slog. Like Halls of Agony, so long, you have to do it 3 times. It's incredibly dull. But
from Diablo 2, you mean?
Diablo 3, Halls of Agony.
The other one. Well, there's one of those in Diablo 2 also.
Yeah, he's talking about the one under Leoric's banner. That one.
Yeah. Wait till you get to Act 2, and you have to go through 47 identical dungeons to get Zoltan Kuhl's head and bones and penis and everything.
Oh, no. You know what's worse than that? The fact that you have to do 4 sewer dungeons in a row in the aqueducts.
Yeah, but they're all very different from each other, though. Oh, wait.
Yeah.
One of them has a wisecracking Asian salesman, though.
Yeah, and he mentions, he says, I've seen this before, blah, blah, blah. Oh, and that's actually another thing that they could do. There were certainly long zones in Diablo 2 as well. However, Diablo 2 had a far more robust dungeon-generating algorithm. In Diablo 3, they're just... the dungeon is arranged on a grid with specific prearranged chunks of levels plopped in certain areas, and you can often get the same configuration of rooms twice or 3 times in a row. Whereas in Diablo 2, there was a lot more room for, squiggly side paths. The rooms were all square, definitely not arranged on a grid, and you had to kind of search and poke about. Although, then again, the reason that worked so well is because the character's movement speed in Diablo 2 was so much faster. In Diablo 3, you move so slowly that backtracking would be something that they have to avoid at all costs.
So you don't like the Diablo 3 dungeons because they're too small, and you don't like the Diablo 3 dungeons because they're not big enough to give you exploration options?
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that in Diablo 3, the dungeons are too long and too samey.
Well, the problem with that, we had the discussion on a past podcast at one point, but Diablo 2 dungeons were much smaller and more varied, but that's because they were tiny little rooms, so you didn't get any big set pieces that looked different. You just got the same dungeon-looking thing for 40 tiles in a row, but you didn't know what the shape was going to be. Whereas D3, they've got these big set pieces that look kind of cool, like little rooms and stuff, but then you get the same one 4 times in the same dungeon.
Yeah, and I'm hoping for some kind of middle ground in the future, which would be best. Yeah. Like, have those big sort of set pieces from Diablo 3, but buffer them with the, random squiggly bits of Diablo 2.
I think they do a pretty good job of that in some of the Act 3 dungeons. Not the tower ones, but some of the areas of hell. I just got one last night that had a side path that went off way, way long, and it was a dead end. I'd never seen one that was laid out that way.
Oh, yeah, the sort of
despite many tries.
I mean, I think those are cool. I had one of those at BlizzCon 2010, wandering on the Halls of Agony. But the problem was you move so slowly that getting back sort of sucks all the fun out of, going off on a tangent.
Yeah, any thoughts about the dungeon layout eliminator? You had any issues with this one?
There is a little bit of repetition, I felt, but I think that they did a pretty decent job with it comparatively to like when you were talking about Diablo 2. It was those really small and sometimes so dark that you didn't even really notice the shape of the thing in the first place. Or you had like the outside environments. Yeah, they were random, but it was just like a random flat plane of nothing. So yeah, who cares if there's like one little spot in the middle of nowhere, or like the dungeon is now in this corner. Like it didn't really add much of anything to the game.
I was actually going to ask about outdoor areas because those are static in Diablo 3, and in Diablo 2 they were randomly generated, but this came up in comments today. Ellie posted a really cool map of all the Act 3 surfaces where all the dungeons can spawn and such. And some people were complaining and saying that they liked the surface areas more in D2. But in my memory, I played about 1 billion hours, roughly speaking, of Diablo 2, and all the Act 1, all the Act 2 surface areas were big rectangles or squares that you ran around the outside of looking for the next area.
Yeah, I mean,
there wasn't really much
variety.
You explored to find the maggot cave. That was pretty much the only time you ever explored anything.
Yeah.
And it was just the same series of areas and occasional little ponds or something, but nothing that changed the gameplay at all. Whereas Diablo 3's are preset. The exterior, the perimeter layout is always the same, but you have to explore them to find the individual stuff. And what do you guys think about it? Go ahead, Eliminator.
I felt that setup, the Diablo 3 setup, is a lot better because, you know how the board is shaped, but now you have to go and look for those specific set pieces. And sometimes they don't. The same ones never spawn in the same spot, like more than once or twice in a row. You'll be lucky to find. I remember in Act 1, there's that little hut. I forget it's in the
Fields of Misery.
Yeah, in there.
The little NPC hut that can be a merchant or can be goats or something.
Yeah, and in that, it's one hut it took me like maybe 8 or 10 times playing through to actually finally see it. And there are tons of things that happened during the game that I had gone through 4 or 5 times and was seeing for the first time.
So what do you think of this one, Grug? The static level layouts with random pieces. I imagine you're probably less of a fan than Eliminator.
I mean, it was a good idea in theory when Blizzard first brought it up. The problem is they didn't really take it as far as they really needed to. Yes, there are lots of little random bits on the inside, but other than those random bits, everything is still the same. And not to mention, even the parts that are the same, they have very, very dull layout. Like if you look at say the what's that zone right before the Defiled Cemetery, the Weeping Hollow.
Weeping Hollow.
Oh god, I went to that zone so many times during beta. But like you look at it, and if you look at the map of it, it's just like there's no real design. It's just kind of a big blob, and the interior of it, anything that's not a set piece, is just peppered with these annoying little blobs of bushes that you can't walk through. They don't really promote any interesting visuals or gameplay. They're just kind of there to take up space.
They're full of torsos.
True, but
like my closet.
Right. I guess maybe what would be better is if the set pieces were a lot denser. Like I played at BlizzCon 2009 when they first introduced the outdoor areas, and pretty much everywhere there was an event every 2 screens or so. They were very close together, and it really made the game world feel more alive. Not just because there was a lot of stuff to do, because there were people everywhere, and it really felt like it was a lived-in place. And I was hoping they would do a lot more with that. But unfortunately, they decided to scarcify all the cool events they made to encourage people to keep re-rolling and see everything, as a way of artificially lengthening the game.
Well, I think you would see those things if you played it longer.
But he wants to see them now.
Yeah.
He got bored. If you'd seen them all at once, you would have gotten sick of them. Oh, same stupid events every game. I'm tired of these. I want different ones.
It's kind of funny because
No.
Grog's half of the argument that he would like to see more of the stuff sooner, and then you'll have those other people that say they don't want to see everything at the same time. Otherwise, why would they want to play again?
You just explained Jay Wilson's ulcer.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Greg. You had something on that.
It's not so much, me getting sick of them. It's just the set pieces. They're the high points of the game, and the fact that they're so scarce is rather unfortunate. I mean, I know a lot of the reasons people are playing through Diablo 3 so much is because there are really great set pieces in the game. Stuff like King Laeric's Bone Pillars and Laeric's Mansion. As soon as you get in, they're like, wow, look at the art of this place. I can't wait to fight through it. But unfortunately, those parts are so few and far between, and people just kind of get strung along hoping that they'll get to see the next one. And I find that rather unfortunate, just how much Blizzard's designed the game to string people along and have artificial lengthening.
I got an inbox full of those offers today. So, Eliminator, I was going to ask you, patches coming up. Grug answered that. What are you looking forward to in patches, and what would change the gameplay? What do you think needs to be fixed?
Well, before we talk about that, I just wanted to say, well, Grug, they could have taken a little bit more time and made it longer, huh?
That's what she said.
Yeah. They could have spent a little more development time, right? Because that's what everybody wanted.
Yeah, and then Activision.
Well, they could have spent their development time more wisely, not.
Well,
oh yes, absolutely. But unfortunately, Activision fired 600 people, and
well, that was their lesson. So go ahead, Eliminator. On patches.
In patches, I could see them definitely. Well, a lot of what you already said that they were already planned, fixing the endgame items and doing a little character fixes and stuff like that is probably what they need to really worry about right now. But for future stuff, they could add more affixes. They could add, I guess they could add the Mystic back if they really wanted to. I guess it's really limitless to what they could add. Add more set pieces if they wanted to. Add different areas if they wanted to, but they'll probably save all that for an expansion. I don't really see them wasting, not really like wasting, I'd say giving that stuff away for free if we were talking about in Bobby lingo,
You guys followed the game closely in advance. You're familiar with a lot of the features that were taken out. We mentioned the rune system previously. It was going to be item-based. And the Mystic and the Talisman and all these other features. Do you think part of your dissatisfaction, Grug, is that they removed so many features and the simplification and the streamlining of things?
Oh, certainly, yes. I mentioned that leveling up currently in Diablo III is rather rote and tiresome, as even though you get new skills during the game, they feel kind of token. They just kind of sit in your inventory because they had to give them to you somehow. You don't really feel like you're picking out or you want these things, and they just kind of happen to you. There was some kind of, the rune system, you could have had a choice, and you would have looked forward to getting some new rune, because it might have helped you out a little more, or it might have plugged up a hole in your builds. I'm just kind of
people would have been complaining about bag space a lot earlier.
Oh,
level 30 to 60 dead zone.
Bag space wasn't an issue, actually, until Jay Wilson and co. made it so. Originally, the runestone system, there were 5 colors of runes, crimson, indigo, golden, alabaster, and obsidian, and each of them could drop in one of 7 ranks. And every color could go into any skill. The problem was that, and that was working fine for a time, but Jay Wilson decided, rightly so, that it was a little bit dull as every rune of the same color and rank was identical. So what they did was they made it so when you picked up a rune, it was colorless, and when you plugged it into a skill, it would pick a random color and also work only in that skill forever. And that's when the inventory problem happened, because suddenly you had, instead of 35 different runes, you had 35 times however many skills you have. That's where the bag space issue came up.
Yeah,
there's no way to keep all of them. And of course, in the end, they decided to scrap it for the stupidest possible reason, which was the inventory issue.
That option, it would have been nice, but I think the inventory issue is an issue because it's already an issue now, and we don't have as many items as we would have had we had those special runes.
Well, that's just it. What are you storing besides equipment and blacksmithing supplies and gems?
Lots of equipment and
lots of equipment.
I have 3 full things full of equipment that I constantly have.
So one other question I had was act bosses. You did get to do all the act bosses at least once, Grug, and you've done them about 1 million times Eliminator, like I have.
Yeah.
What do you guys feel about? Do you like the style? Do you like the whole different fight level of them? That's kind of the locked room thing, and if you die, you have to repeat it if you're playing solo, which is kind of drives me crazy sometimes.
I'll start. I thought Belial was absolutely fantastic. I thought it was a real high point of the series, just sort of the craziness of it, and the way it progressed from the first form into the second form, and it gave me high hopes for the rest of the game, seeing that the rest of the encounters would have that level of creativity to them. Unfortunately, though, the Butcher fight was all right. It was about standard for then. On a personal note, I thought that it was a really stupid idea to make the Butcher an act boss. Asmodan was kind of a joke. Maybe it was because I was way ahead of the leveling curve when that happened. And Diablo was kind of interesting. I liked having to dodge the meteor attack and use careful use of the healing wells, but it was okay.
What do you think, Eliminator?
I definitely agree that the Belial battle is probably the best one in the game. I think that the Diablo 1 could have went somewhere else after you go to the Nightmare, the Terror Zone, or whatever you want to call it.
Realm of Terror.
Yeah. And once you get past that, I think you could have had him do something else besides just bring out his Godzilla breath.
Lightning hose.
They've got a ton of. If you actually look at the wiki, we've got all the lists of all their special abilities. You never even notice a few of them. I mean, like you see, like Asmodan can drop bodies on you, but he does it like once in a while, and it's not real obvious if that's what's happening.
Yeah.
And they have these really cool abilities.
And you're so busy running away from the black ichor-y stuff on the floor anyway, so that you're not.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that you really pay attention to.
And you can create the little monster-generating things, but you can kill those in like 1 second, and they're actually helpful because they give you health globes if you let the monsters come out.
You actually want them to stick around so that you can get some health from them.
I mean, this might just be me because I haven't done any auction housing, so my characters are perpetually somewhat under-geared. But having to replay, and I'm usually playing solo, but having to replay each time I die on an act boss, the whole goddamn cinematic and the intro portion is just really annoying. I find that exceptionally frustrating.
I agree with that part,
And you die on Belial, and then it's like, okay, goody. Now you have to go back and listen to his stupid speech. Obviously, you can click through the speech, but then you have to fight his little puppet snake him in, and then little miniature Belial, Mini B as I call him.
I mean,
and that's all just like 2 minutes of bullshit. And then finally, after you finish that, then the real fight starts again. If you die, hey, guess what? Do it all over again.
Well, I disagree. I feel like the minion fight and Belial's first form are important because it's what the encounter is. It's building up, and you can't exactly. If you could just start on the final form, it would feel like something completely different, and like the previous two things weren't connected at all.
The only problem.
Well, try doing it 5 times in a row when you're under gear.
Yeah, or when you're in Nightmare not Nightmare, when you're in Hell and Inferno, when you're pulling your hair out that you finally got into that second or third phase, and now you have to do it all the way from the beginning again.
I think it's worth mentioning that most of the reason I've died on Belial most of the time was due to the fact that he's so large that it's hard to find a spot on the floor to click in order to move. Anyone else have that problem?
There's that. No, not really.
Not really.
It's hard to dodge his shit, but I've died because I've been under-geared and I get one-shotted by his goddamn meteors. But I think Diablo's even more annoying with his, it's the same stupid. Of course, part of it goes into the whole storytelling and dialogue thing we were all complaining about earlier. Where it's like, I will kill everyone you love. I will dig up your mother and skull effer. He just goes on and on about this. Like this radio DJ taunting, it's like a really cheesy sports radio show. Well, I'm gonna break Tony Romo's legs and break his kidney. It's like, okay, great, I get the idea.
He sounds like a disgruntled teenage girl. That's what he is, right?
And he does it 4 times in the same battle. Before you go to the land of terror, and then you get back. Now I'm really gonna kill you. It's like, just shut up and never talk again.
Well, that's the same thing with Asmodan too. Every time you defeat one of his.
I've never died to Asmodan, though.
Well, I'm talking about like during the Act 3, he's constantly, you've defeated something I didn't even need to defeat you with, or
it turns out those catapults were optional.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't need the spider whore either. Good luck.
I didn't need that guy, the fat guy in the basement. I didn't need any of that stuff.
Yes, I'm going to tell you my exact plans all this time. You know what's really tragic though? Flux, I know you did, but Eliminator, did you read the Reddit Q&A that Jay Wilson and co did?
I think I did.
But basically, one of the fans brought up how the story was kind of lame, and Jay Wilson's response was, we're sorry you had a bad experience with the thing, but our internal testing was overwhelmingly positive.
Oh.
That makes me wonder what kind of, idiots...
Well, we already know. We already know what kind of people they have. It's Bashak's mom.
Yeah.
and Wyatt Chang's grandmother.
Yeah. Wyatt Chang's grandmother. There you go.
I could probably fill an entire podcast about how stupid a decision it was to add Leia to the game.
But she's got a cute voice.
Yes, but that's it. Like, her whole shtick was to be... the only reason she's in the game is for someone young and attractive for all the new WoW players to latch onto. Consider Diablo II. We had Marius as the chief driving force of the story, and he was great. He really fit the horror atmosphere. He's a crazy guy who walked with the devil for a long time, and he's in a prison, and he has, he makes us feel his fear and his despair that everything is so unbelievably hopeless. Whereas Leia could be like, an anime protagonist, like super tsundere super tsundere about, oh, uncle, you're just being an idiot. Nothing's wrong at all. And then what happens, like, oh, okay, I'm going to be the one who follows everything. Yeah. And, she whines about, oh, my mother is gone, and, oh, she's alive now, and, it hurts while I'm doing this thing. But she's just such a stupid character.
And the rest of them weren't?
Yeah.
Considering that how much focus she's supposed to have. I mean, they turned Kane into a caricature, which is unforgivable.
I always thought Kane was a character in any of the games, in all of them. It's just his voice. Oh, it drove me crazy.
What's the last big-budget Hollywood movie you saw, Grug?
In theaters or in person? Or in general? Because I saw The Matrix last night.
Because every complaint you made about the Diablo plot is present in every big-budget action blockbuster.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it's just how storytelling is done now. It's all archetypal characters and very obvious bullshit.
Yeah, which is unfortunate because I thought, Blizzard was better than that, but I guess that was the days before Chris Metzen.
There was no Blizzard before Chris Metzen. He's been there for 25 years.
Before Chris Metzen was the lead writer. Have you noticed that every StarCraft 2 and Diablo 3 and I think part of Cataclysm, it was all about the prophecy. Ooh, the prophecy.
Yeah,
the laziest storytelling art plot device ever. Not to mention the fact that in Diablo 3 they don't do anything with the prophecy at all. It's just like, hey, we're gonna foreshadow some of the events of the story so you can look back and think we're all being very clever.
I mean, I got a very strong sense of this when the Demon Hunter cinematic came out, and it was the cheesiest, corniest dialogue in the world.
Oh, absolutely, yes. Yes.
And that's really, I just get the same feeling from most of the game. It's just sort of this really big, obvious themes that can be comprehended in 1 second by anyone in the world in any translation of any language.
Listen, BlizzCon 2010, the Demon Hunter premiere cinematic, that was when my faith in Diablo 3 was first shaken. I'm like, wow, how can this be? This cannot be in the game. This will not be in the game. And here we are now.
This came up in a past podcast, but it seems like, since you brought up the Chris Metzen thing, is he's kind of responsible for the main overall plot, which is, people can differ in their hatred of Leah and other elements of it, but it's obviously, it's meant to be kind of a big-budget, Transformers-y, Michael Bay kind of thing. It's really obvious what's happening. The plot twist you see it a million miles ahead. If anybody actually played through Act 2 and didn't know that Belial was actually the Emperor, I would be shocked, I mean, Azure said this in a podcast. He thought the twist was going to be that he wasn't the Emperor because it was made so obvious that he had to be the Emperor.
I felt the same way. It's so annoying. The same with Adria turning evil. It's like, oh, let's see. We have a character here who is not all about sunshine and rainbows. I really hope that she's just, she's an actual character and not an obvious villain in hiding.
But I think that was intentional. They wrote the game to be this very accessible, simplistic, the main overall plot.
Yeah.
I think there is good writing. Like, a lot of the dialogues are pretty good. A lot of little small events are cool.
Yeah. Like,
and that stuff seems like the stuff that, the whole background, the Book of Cain stuff is pretty good.
I think
some of the angel backgrounds, and it seems like a lot of the stuff that Leonard Boyarsky and the other guys did is pretty good and subtle and interesting. But they just made this decision to make the overall plot really Hollywood blockbuster stupid.
Like the companions, they're a little more interesting than the story itself.
Well, the first 75 times they say the same dialogue, yes. It does get a little old, but they do have some interesting concepts. I mean, like the whole background of Lyton, and like his brother and his lost love, and he's in prison.
Actually, I thought that Cormac's backstory was rather novel when I heard about it. Basically, I'd never heard that before about someone given amnesia to atone for their sins. It turns out they had no sins whatsoever, and they were just being brainwashed.
And he talks about going to battle the leaders of his order. If they get into some of that stuff in the expansion, it could be.
They probably will. I'm thinking that they're going to add an act between Act 2 and Act 3 because they got that little time skip before they find out where the assault's going to happen. Anyways, I think they're probably going to add some kind of sub act where they deal with Cormac's side story, Lyndon's side story, fighting the Thieves Guild, and also Shen's side story where you have to find the Durgis Jewel. Or at least they would if they didn't act. The problem is that they don't tell you about their real problems until Act 4. By then it's too late.
Well, certainly the Enchantress, because you find out that her prophet was an angel, and that doesn't happen until Act 4.
Well, we kind of already know who the prophet is. I mean, because that was the nickname of Inaris. The guy created a sanctuary. he was called himself the prophet, so obviously that's referring to him. And they had that art. They had that piece of art of what people thought was him, like his spirit looking upon a defiled version, his defiled body, basically, of it all being stretched out and bloated and chained, so his eyelids was constantly open, so he'd have to peer upon himself. That was all talked about and referenced, but they never even went into it. That's why one of the things, when we talked about the story earlier, that there's so many things that they didn't go into.
Well, there we go. Lots of material for the expansion, and I'm sure they'll ruin it with some stupid plot about Adria and her menstrual cramps.
And trying to bring back Leah somehow.
Surprise! You thought Leah was my only daughter? It turns out I have several daughters, all of them who have demon lords as their fathers. I am a demon whore.
Well, that worked. Well, we got 2 sons of King Leoric, so they can always add another daughter.
Oh, can I just point out how stupid it was that they turned the warrior into Aiden's son, or into Leoric's son, and they didn't do a single thing with it?
I think they thought of that late in the process and thought, that'd be a cool. They changed some of the dialogue, but it was too late.
Yeah, there was no
that
point
retcon, that was done much later.
I mean, it was way more interesting when we didn't know about the origin of the warrior. In fact, if we didn't know about the origin of the warrior, it could have been brought up in a later content patch, and suddenly found out that, now we know he has some kind of heritage that's really important, blah, blah, blah.
By the way, those are known as Metcons.
Yeah. I think if you were a newcomer, you still wouldn't know who the warrior was or whatever. You hear Aiden, and you were like, "Who's Aiden?"
It would be interesting if there's a human being who hadn't played the series before and was trying to get into the story, how much of it they can grasp.
Mm.
It might be frightening. Like you see these things where they have kids who've never seen the original Star Wars movies and they think the new ones are good.
Oh God. Let's not
like the first one they ever saw was the little junior Anakin flying a spaceship around and stuff, and like, oh, these are really good. I like Jar Jar Binks.
Sorry, I have to let you die now.
Okay, so final thoughts. Grug, what would change to make you come play Diablo 3 again, or is it too late and you will never come back?
Adding a lot more content and a lot less filler.
How about you, Eliminator? You're still happy with it? Are you burning out? Are you looking? What's your plan for the immediate next month or 2 or 3?
I'm gonna keep playing the characters that I got, get them all up to level 60. Hopefully by then we'll have some PvP, and hopefully also by then the item stuff will be fixed up in Inferno. I've kind of taken a backseat to Inferno and just kind of playing around with the other characters for now, leveling them up, having fun with that.
Yeah, I'm kind of doing that also. I've been doing a little Inferno, and it's just frustrating, and it's hard to find stuff, and I think it'll be more fun once they do the patch and get better items and diversification.
Yeah.
So my monk is like 36 or so, and my witch doctor's only like 12. He's the lowest level character I have. So I'm kind of thinking I want to get one of each to 60 to try all the skills and all the builds.
What level's your wizard?
59 or so, 58.
Almost 60. Did you feel that the wizard didn't get really interesting until 30?
Well, that's kind of true of all of them. It just depends.
Nah, I thought the barbarian was somewhat interesting once he started to get the charge and stuff like that. Because there was a bunch of different things.
Yeah, he was. I was surprised. The bar was my second character to a higher level.
Mm-hmm.
I meant to do a podcast like months ago, comparing what everyone thought from the beta versus the full game. And the Bard was like my least favorite beta character and my second favorite full game character because he gets movement skills and becomes pretty fun.
Yeah.
Mm.
Which is exactly what happened to me in Diablo 2. It took to level 50 for him to get fun in that game. At least level 30.
Can I just point out how unfortunate it is that you guys admit that, characters aren't fun to play until they reach a certain level, which may take several hours to get to?
It's tough because we played them all a million times in the beta, so...
Mm.
If you hadn't played 100 hours of the beta, and it's the first time you ever played a Demon Hunter, you'd be like, oh wow, this is fun.
Yeah. I played the beta 300 plus hours, so using those same skills over and over again just with a little tweak wasn't really as interesting as once I got to 30 and I was having brand new skills and stuff to play with.
True. I just wish we could get to that point a little bit faster.
And by the way, Diablo 2, characters are horrible until like Nightmare.
Oh, God.
You have no mana leech, you've got 0 resources, you've got only a tiny little amount of skills. Lots of times your really cool skills, you're sitting on all your skill points till 30.
Yeah.
Just to start spending skill points. Yeah, you're casting Firebolt for 26 levels.
You're casting one Firebolt every couple of seconds. It's how boring it is.
Because you can't waste. Yeah, I mean, I hate to agree with Bashiok, but that was definitely something that was the character leveling up progression thing. You know, having to save skill points was kind of a nice strategic thing, and it paid off. But man, it was boring in the meantime.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was going to get into the whole Diablo 2 changes and expansions, but we've already gone long, so maybe next time, guys.
All right.
So, any final thoughts for you? I guess we just did them.
We did them.
Yeah.
Okay, you've been listening to the Diablo Podcast. We are online at diablopodcast.com. Bye-bye.
Later.
Bye.